Hello, and welcome to Remember the Film, where this week we are going to do the Star Wars Wars and rank all of the Star Wars feature-length movies, or, well, live-action releases, and do our Film to Remember list. So this is a really stupid intro with me wearing a Darth Vader mask. This is why I'm flustered and I don't know what to say. But yeah, hello guys, how are you doing?
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Doing great, Hugo. It was brilliant. You did a great job.
There you
Hello
are.
there.
There's our hero.
All right. Okay. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty straightforward episode, right, Hugo?
Episodes.
That's a good point, Josh.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So from the top, this is going to be a two-part episode. In the first part, we're going to do a ranking of all the Star Wars movies. We're not including the Clone Wars animated feature because I just thought, first of all, because Josh hasn't seen it and
Correct.
I think he would hate it, and because it's not great, and also because I don't think it's fair to rank that individually without the rest of the show, because it's kind of basically it's the first 4 episodes of what the show would be anyway. So it wouldn't really make sense for the purpose of this episode. The episode will be divided in 2 parts, so I think we're going to get through our numbers 11 to 6 in part 1, and then do the top 5 in the second part of the episode. One will release this week, and then the next one will release next week.
Yes.
Everyone on board?
Yes, and just before we get started, I do want to mention we have started a Remember the Film Twitter. It is at RTF_pod. So if you would follow us there, that way you can get updates about when we have episodes coming out, or if we want to ask questions for fans to, give us their feedback on. That's the place to do it. And then, of course, you can also follow us at our respective Twitters and send us all those hate tweets Josh has been encouraging you to send to us.
Correct.
And there's going to be hate tweets after this episode.
Oh, I'm sure there will be.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Did you see that at RTF_podcast was taken?
I did see that.
Seriously?
Yes. Apparently these people
Amazing.
writing a graphic novel have a Twitter account for making a graphic novel that's been around since 2014, so good for them.
Yeah.
RTF pod, at RTF_pod for us, though. Don't read the graphic novel people's Twitter feed. Read ours.
I mean, you can read their Twitter feed as well if you're interested, but
no,
the
don't.
focus...
You can only pick one.
Oh, I'm sorry, guys. I misled you.
Either at RTF_pod or at RTF_podcast. Choose your side. And make it ours.
Choose us, please. Okay.
So, Hugo, what's the first thing you want to ask us? Yeah.
So, at the beginning, I just thought we'd talk about, for a few minutes, just talk about our history kind of with Star Wars. When did we first become fans? How do we feel about, the Star Wars series overall? How do we feel about where kind of Disney is taking it in the future as well? And, sort of an introductory idea of where we stand with this series. So, first of all, I'd just like to know from each of us, what was the first Star Wars movie we ever saw, just in general, and what was the first Star Wars movies that we saw in theaters?
Okay.
Grizz?
I will kick it off, yeah. I do not remember a time in which I had not watched Star Wars. So my earliest memories of movies are Star Wars. My brother is 3 years older than me, so I'm sure my dad's a Star Wars fan, so they were already watching Star Wars by the time I was making memories. So I was with them. So I can't really tell you exactly which one was the first one I saw, but original trilogy, probably all on the same day.
Nice,
awesome. So
but
the first one you would have seen in theaters would be The Phantom Menace, right? Or the special editions. Maybe.
It would have been the special editions that came out in '97. It would have been the first time I saw them in theaters.
Which would have made you, what, 8 or 9?
Yes. I was
January,
born in '88.
Yeah. Right.
That's math.
So you would have been 11
I would have been
years old.
9 years old.
Yep. What? No. Oh, the special editions, yes.
Special editions,
97,
yep.
You're right. Right. What about you, Josh?
There actually was a time that I can remember before I saw Star Wars. And the only reason I know that is because I have a distinct memory of being at, my mom's cousin's house or something like that, and Empire, the people at the house were watching Empire, and like I was like 6 years old and wandered in like, what's this or whatever, and like my brother, and it was the Dagobah system scenes, and my older brother said, "Is this the movie where Luke gets his hand cut off?" And like I distinctly remember hearing that before I had seen any Star Wars movies. I'm like, whoa, that sounds intense and scary, but I'm also intrigued. So what is this? And then the special editions came out in '97, and I know those are largely, hated by a lot of people.
I think
for
we'll
various
get
reasons.
into it because, I think
Sure, but
opinions have changed over the years.
Sure. I get why people are uncomfortable with them, but that was my first exposure to the movies, really, because I was 7 years old, so that's kind of like right in the pocket of, I think, experiencing Star Wars for the first time. So I saw all 3 special editions in theaters, and that was the first time I'd seen any Star Wars movie, and I became obsessed immediately. So first Star Wars movie I saw was Star Wars, and the first one I saw in theater was also Star Wars in '97 when the special editions were released. How about you, Hugo?
Well, that's cool. I'm a bit younger than you guys. I was born in 1996, so I didn't really have the experience of watching the obviously not the special editions, but not even the prequels. Like the first Star Wars movies I saw in theaters was Revenge of the Sith, because that came out when I was 9 years old.
Yeah, that makes sense.
2005. And I think that's where, because I'm not exactly sure if I had seen the other movies before, but I remember that one was the one that kind of made me a Star Wars fan. Like after seeing that in theaters, I sort of did, I made my parents buy me the DVDs and I watched them all through several times, because you know how 9-year-olds get, you get obsessive and you just watch the same thing over and over again.
I had the same experience, but I watched the VHSs of the original trilogy, which shows our age difference.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And that's when I became like a huge fan, I think. And I think because that was the first one that I saw in the theaters, initially, I was 9 years old, so for me initially I was more of a fan of the prequels actually, because the special effects at the time looked more modern. The fights were all like super choreographed and looked awesome. So to my young eyes, it was like, oh, this is more
that's also
fast-paced and interesting.
That's also like your trilogy as opposed to like your parents' trilogy.
Yeah,
I get that.
I feel like kind of my trilogy, in the sense that I've experienced it in theaters, is probably more the sequel trilogies, because again I was 19 years old, just finishing high school when the Force Awakens came out, and that was kind of a pivotal moment for me, because it was like the first time that I watched Star Wars in theaters, being aware of what Star Wars really was. So that was a big moment. But over the years my opinions have changed on Star Wars, so I'm not the prequels aren't my favorites anymore, but they still have a special place in my heart, I think. So how do you feel about the series in general? Do you consider yourself like a fan, or is it something that you were a fan more when you were a kid, or do you hate the Disney era of Star Wars and want to send death threats to Kathleen Kennedy or whatever?
I definitely consider myself a fan. Maybe not as much as you guys, being a Star Wars fan is all relative, and there are different, I think, levels to it. For example,
absolutely.
I've seen the feature-length movies, and that's kind of it, but I am a big fan of the feature-length movies. Just before we started recording, I was scrolling through Twitter this morning, and someone posted one of those like 4-image prompts, which is you have to get rid of one, which 3 you're keeping, and the 3 were Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel, and Lord of the Rings. And if I'm set aside keeping one, keeping 3. If I'm only keeping one, I'm keeping Star Wars of those 4. That's how much the movies mean to me. And I don't know, that I'm pretty excited about the fact that Disney owns Star Wars, just because it means we're getting more Star Wars for years to come. I guess I should say I have mixed feelings about that, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, I'm a big fan, and I love these movies for sure.
Chris?
Yeah, I'm the same way with the Disney stuff for sure. The prequels, I guess I should preface by saying I enjoy every Star Wars movie. There has not been a Star Wars movie that I have not at least enjoyed. So even the prequels I enjoy, but I was excited about the prospects of the Disney acquisition because it meant, one, we'd get a lot more Star Wars, and I am always wanting more Star Wars. So that was going to be perfect for me. But then also, Disney's track record is generally they don't release movies that are bad. They might not be groundbreaking or they might not be like the best thing ever, but it's very rare that Disney releases a movie that is outright bad. So that gives me confidence in a baseline to expect for all future Star Wars is that, okay, at worst, I'm still going to enjoy this.
Correct. Yeah.
So I'm very, very, very excited about that.
I feel pretty much the same. I'm a giant fan. And I pretty much love all of it. I have my issues with some of the films and even some parts of the TV shows that I don't like as much. But overall, I'm a huge fan. I'm a fan of what Disney has done so far. I think actually I don't know if I completely agree that Disney doesn't release bad movies, but they certainly have a track record of whenever they acquire like a property or a big studio, they kind of let them be, because Kevin Feige has huge creative control over the Marvel Universe, and I think in the same way Lucasfilm is still, I don't think it's completely true that Disney is this big overlord that controls the creative side of what Lucasfilm does. Because certainly they make so much money out of the merchandise and all that stuff that I don't think they have that much of a stake in specifically the creative direction that they're going in Star Wars. I think Lucasfilm is still pretty independent in what they produce. Obviously not as independent as it was before, because when one person is basically the most successful indie filmmaker of all time, he has complete creative control, and obviously it's not exactly the same, but overall I think I'm pretty excited about the future of Star Wars, and I think it's also a good idea to pivot to television a bit more and let the movies still be events and just release one every 2 or 3 years.
That's just acknowledging the changing media landscape. I think everything's kind of moving towards TV or a hybrid of TV and movies. Sure. Yeah, but I think Star Wars kind of like to what you're just saying there, Hugo. I think Star Wars kind of became too big to be, guided by one person. Like it's now it's like if only one person could ever make westerns and no one else is ever allowed to make westerns. That's just like crazy. It became too big that like. All respect to George Lucas, I wish him well, and he can enjoy his $4 million he made in 2012 for this deal, but or $4 billion rather.
$4 billion. Yeah.
I'm glad that I'm glad a larger entity, like a team of people, is now in charge of this brand, for lack of a better word. Just it kind of outgrew one guy.
Star Wars is a tricky property just in general, and I mean it always has been because it became such a cultural icon. But in addition to it, the movies being too big to be held together by one vision, canon has always been at the heart of Star Wars fandom. Star Wars, the hardcore Star Wars fans are all about what is canon, what's not canon, and so they have books, they have comics, they have video games that are some are canon, some are not. So it's it's impossible to keep that all under one vision. You couldn't do it.
But I think you kind of can now because the creative vision isn't one person, it's the story group, which is kind of a big conglomerate of writers and producers and visual effects people, and they all work together to build this larger thing. And I think so far they've done a pretty good job, and until they start releasing stuff that I really don't like, I don't see why I shouldn't look forward to what they're doing.
Agreed.
But having said that, we've sort of introduced our feelings towards the saga as a whole, and now we get into the Star Wars Wars, which is the gigantic section of the podcast where we're going to rank all of the Star Wars movies. The way we're going to do this is the same way we did for our Tarantino episode. If you listen to that,
go listen to that.
Each of us will present their list going from 11 to 1, and we'll talk about each movie as it comes up. I think the idea is if, for example, if I have a movie at number 11, but it's higher on Josh's list, we just say, we'll talk about it when all of us have said the movie. Okay? I think that's pretty simple. And then at the end, we're going to add up all of the points and give sort of like the official Remember the Film list ranked list of Star Wars movies.
Which will reflect none of our individual ideas about the rankings, but
yes,
that's the fun part. At least for me and Hugo.
It'll be a combination. It'll be a combination of our thoughts. But I mean, it's just an excuse to talk about each movie individually and then share our opinions on it. Right? Okay. So who would like to start with their number 11?
I'll go first.
Grizz, yeah, give me Grizz.
There you go, Grizz.
I don't think this one's going to be a hot take. I think everyone will either have this at 11 or 10. That's my guess. But my number 11 is Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Also my number 11, yes.
Also my number 11.
Okay.
So
Actually,
we
not
can
true.
pencil
Not
it
true.
in.
I'm moving this to 10. Mine is 10.
Okay,
Let me
so-
correct the record. Mine is 10.
Okay. Fair enough. So it's my number 11 as well.
Do we want to talk
Josh,
about
what
it
do you
now
have at
or
number
wait
10?
till we put it at 10?
Yeah. Let's talk about it now. Yeah, of course.
Josh, tell us. Okay, let's talk about it now. And Josh has it at 10. That's fair. That makes sense. It's just one position over, so it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, who'd like to start about this?
Grizz,
I'll go
why
ahead and
is
kick it
Attack
off.
of the Clones? Yeah.
So, like as I said, I still enjoy this movie, and I will, preface. I want to preface that because when I talk about Attack of the Clones, I always get really negative about what I always sound really negative because I can't really express like why I still enjoy watching it. I watch it like every time I rewatch the whole. I never skip it. I enjoy watching it. But for me, what it boils down to, the biggest problem with Attack of the Clones is the love story. The love story is so bad in Attack of the Clones, and this is what I said in my most recent review. It makes me question whether or not George Lucas has ever been in love, because there's no way that you can have experienced love and write such a horrible love story. The language is stilted. It doesn't make sense. It's all around bad. The love story, but surrounding this love story for me is a lot of really cool moments and great action sequences, and the lore of Star Wars gets really fleshed out in Attack of the Clones. So there's still a lot of really positive things, but since the movie is like 60% love story,
It's the emotional spine, for sure. That's the emotional spine of the movie.
it's tough to really do anything with this because that central element is so bad. What do you guys think?
Well, I think I'll go next, and because I also have it at number 11. So
Fair
I
enough.
guess, this as I said before, I said I love all of Star Wars. I kind of mean it more. I love all of the eras of Star Wars, but Attack of the Clones specifically is the only Star Wars movie that I actively dislike. It's the only one that I really can't defend or be positive about, to be honest, because it's not just the romance is pretty painful to watch, specifically because it's not just that it's really sappy and feels like it's written by a teenager who's experienced their first crush, but it's also because Anakin is a creep in this film. There are several scenes in which it's like Padme says specifically, "You're making me uncomfortable," and he's just staring at her.
Doesn't he put a camera on her while she sleeps?
Yeah, it's there are several moments in this that are just and I'm like, why would this super smart senator? She's 20 years old. She's a senator. She's really interesting woman. Fall for this creepy, weird guy who's kind of into fascism openly. It's I kind of have a gripe with that. And also, my thing about this movie is it really makes you dislike Anakin as a character. So
correct, yes.
The point of the prequels is supposed to be that you feel for you are on Anakin's side, and so you feel the tragedy of him becoming Darth Vader and falling to the dark side. But this whole movie, you're just kind of oh, this guy is an asshole. Sorry for the word, but this guy is a creep. And also, again, I also don't think this, in terms of action and cinematography in general, I think just this is the weakest, even of the prequels. I think all the bad stuff people say about the prequels in terms of how they're made, how much green screen there is, this is the worst
one they're
offender of
talking
all.
about.
Yeah, there's quite a few action sequences and I'm like, why is this even in the movie? Sort of the conveyor belt scene and the whole bit where C-3PO loses its head and it becomes a droid. It's it's silly. It's, I don't know. And I also, all the Jedi are kind of mean in this movie, and I know that's kind of
The prequels in general are tough on the Jedi. Yeah, prequels in general are tough.
I think but I think that's kind of the point, because you're supposed to think, oh, these guys are a little going too hard with the dogma here, and this is one of the reasons why they fail overall. But this movie makes you kind of dislike them. If I have to say something nice about it, I think, I really enjoy Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan.
Yes.
Going into his little noir film, investigating whatever's going on with the clones. I think Dexter Jetster is a fun character with the diner.
I agree.
Yeah, that's right.
But other than that, I also think I watched this the last time with my girlfriend, and it was only the second time that she'd watched it, and she's not like huge into Star Wars lore, and I think this movie is really confusingly edited. Like, it's hard to follow exactly what's happening. There are two planets that look exactly the same if you're not like, because I know it's Tatooine, so I know the rocky one isn't Tatooine, but they look the same. Right. So it's kind of confusing. You're not sure whether you're one planet on the other. It's just overall, I think this is the only one that I'm like, I can't defend this, to be honest.
I gotta say, I do appreciate the Dexter shout out.
I love that guy.
I love his voice.
Yeah, he's great.
Obi-Wan!
Oh, my friend! Oh.
And shout out to Ewan McGregor, who is sitting opposite probably just a guy in a green costume, as he was
100%,
I imagine. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good for him. I'm gonna speak a little long on Attack of the Clones, just because I think that how I feel about the prequels in general can be summed up by how I feel about Attack of the Clones. So I'll talk longer about this one than I will about the other ones. I think it is, like I just said, emblematic of the prequels in the good ways and the bad ways. The good thing I can say about Attack of the Clones and the prequels in general is that I think that it is ambitious, but still a miss.
Yep.
I think it's visually and narratively ambitious, but it's also visually and narratively ill-conceived. Hugo, you mentioned that the special effects don't look great. This is actually the first major release movie shot entirely on digital and not on film.
And you can tell.
Yes. Not only that, but it also was one of the first movies I imagined to have environments entirely rendered in blue and green screen, which is now the norm. But this was the first one to do it. And that's ambitious. I respect the effort and the attempt, but it clearly wasn't quite there yet. It was almost there. This technology is right around the corner. This is 7 years before Avatar, 10 years before Life of Pi, 11 years before Gravity. Movies that are just amazingly realistic, but so the technology is right around the corner, but it's still around the corner. And I rewatched this movie this week, and it kind of looks like shit. No disrespect, but it just doesn't look good. Grace, you have a finger up.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that it definitely is it's a problem of George Lucas as a filmmaker, and I'll put problem in quotes. He always wants to be on the cutting edge of his filmmaking. So he was
just like James Cameron.
Yeah, and he was with the original trilogy. Everything that he was doing there, most of it was brand new stuff, and then did it again with the prequels. And so really impressive and ambitious, like you said. But I'm guessing you're the same way I am, where I just kind of wish that we had waited another 5 years.
Exactly. I mentioned James Cameron, who tries to be on the cutting edge of technology, and he waits until the technology is available until he makes the movie. That's why he sometimes goes 10 years without making a movie. He's waiting for the technology to catch up to his vision. And Grizz, to your point, the original trilogy used, it was cutting edge, but it was also more low budget ingenuity,
right?
As opposed to I have all the money so I can do anything I want kind of thing. And I think that worked better for me. And it's outdated visuals can be forgiven if the storytelling is strong enough. We've talked about The Thing on this podcast. The Thing doesn't look very good now. The Terminator doesn't look very good now, to talk about James Cameron again. But we forgive the cheesy 80s special effects because the story around it is great. And if the story around this was great, I could forgive the bad special effects, but it's not great. Again, I think it's ambitious. I think the storytelling is ambitious in that there's a lot of ground to cover in this. As you said, Grizz, the love story is the narrative spine of the movie. And the love story goes from these two people who haven't seen each other in a decade, and then it ends with them married. That's an entire, reacquaintance, courtship, falling in love, marriage that has to play out in a single movie. And also Civil War has to break out in addition to that love story happening. So there's a lot of ground to cover.
And the whole thing has to be secret.
Yes. Well, both the Civil War and the love story both have to be secret. So, and like you can say that about the prequels in general. You know, the hook of the prequels is you see this young slave kid become Darth Vader. That's a lot of ground to cover. So the prequels are biting off a big chunk of story to tell, and whether or not they pull that off, I would argue not great. But like, it's not because he's not trying. Like maybe this movie would have been better served if it was a little more focused and you know, not trying to tell so much story, but. Just the love story, to both of your points, the love story feels so rushed, and I don't buy it at all. And you have to buy it for the movie to work, and I don't buy it, and it doesn't work. There are other things you can talk about. Like I think this has a problem with stakes because, like, you know, when Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Yoda are fighting Count Dooku, what's the stakes there? You've seen all three of these characters in future movies, so like. There are only so many things that can go wrong for these guys.
Right.
And so, I don't know, like, where's the drama in that scene?
It's also not a great fight scene, to be honest.
Exactly. Like, I mean, I guess theoretically the drama is, like, how cool it looks, but it doesn't look very good, as I've said.
No.
We also didn't know if they were going to defeat Dooku in that movie. Like, we didn't know that Dooku was going to be in part 3.
True.
So,
and he barely is. Yeah.
And he barely is. So, you know, there's that. But also, as far as it not being that great of a fight scene, I agree. Looking back on it now, it's, especially the Yoda stuff, is too much. It's overdone.
It's not only, it's like, I think even in the part that's not Yoda, there's so many like weird close-ups that just don't look very good.
They have
the
to do the
choreography
close-ups
is cool.
because that's the only way that you can see that Christopher Lee is fighting.
Yeah,
Christopher Lee's like in his late 70s at this point, so
that makes sense.
But
that makes sense.
But as far as the Yoda stuff, because I did want to touch on that, I just remember seeing this movie in theaters and how the theater exploded when Yoda lights up his lightsaber.
Yeah,
that's a moment for me in movie history that when that moment happened, everyone was just so hyped. That, like, even looking back on it now, when I can see that, okay, this is a little cheesy. He sure is flipping a lot. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But even knowing all that, I still get a little smile every time I watch this scene because of how much everyone enjoyed it in that moment.
Yeah, I mean, I was 12 when that happened in theaters, and like, yeah, that was cool. But I don't know. In hindsight, it's not what you want.
I believe it, but imagine this. Imagine if they had saved Yoda finally pulling out the lightsaber and fighting for the final fight against the Emperor in Revenge of the Sith. I think that would have been even bigger.
I mean,
it's just the last resort.
I forgot that he did that even. Like, I rewatched Revenge of the Sith this week as well, and I completely forgot that Yoda and the Emperor had a lightsaber fight in the Senate Hall in that. Last thing I'll say about Attack of the Clones, it's been mentioned already, but not to beat a dead horse, but Hayden Christensen just doesn't really have it here. These movies are the only thing I've seen him in. But I hear he's a great actor. Like, he's in the movie Shattered Glass, the Billy Ray movie. Apparently he's great.
Yep.
I haven't seen that. I've only seen him as Anakin. He's not great as Anakin. This dialogue is hard to make. It's hard to sound good saying these words, but like, Natalie Portman's a very talented actress. She pulls it off okay. Ewan McGregor's a very talented actor. He pulls it off okay, and Hayden Christensen does not.
So I think that it's safe to say that Hayden Christensen is not as good an actor as Natalie Portman or Ewan McGregor.
I would say that, yes.
But I haven't seen him in anything else either. But the fact of the matter is that because I can see Ewan McGregor and Natalie Portman having to struggle to make this work, and I know they're good, then it gives me the ability to give benefit of the doubt to Hayden Christensen that, okay, but this probably isn't his fault. The language is stilted in most of his scenes. That's,
it's largely not his fault, but also as Portman and McGregor kind of demonstrate, a more talented actor can make it work a little bit better.
I'll agree with
he
that.
makes it work. So
for sure.
Yeah. All right, I ranted about Attack the Clones. That's it for me.
We are.
And that's my number 10.
Out.
And that's your number 10.
Oh,
so
damn.
I can't wait to hear what you say about your number 11, which I guess we'll hear now.
Phantom Menace.
Yes.
Episode 1, Phantom Menace is my 11.
I had a feeling.
And so I should say that I rewatched Attack of the Clones this week, probably for the first time since theaters, I imagine. I did not have time to rewatch Phantom Menace, so part of the reason I put it at 11 is like I have nothing to say about it, and
right.
I remember so little from it. The things I remember is that it has a main character problem, as does Attack of the Clones a bit, in that like who is the main character of Phantom Menace in your guys' mind?
Yeah,
it's Qui-Gon.
It's Qui-Gon?
I would lean towards
Qui-Gon.
Qui-Gon. I would lean towards Qui-Gon,
Yeah.
but I also, after rewatching The Phantom Menace, I rewatched a well-known review of The Phantom Menace.
I'm aware of it, yes.
Red Letter Media.
I'm aware, yes.
And they make that point
Yeah.
in there as well, the who's the main character. You're absolutely right. It's like, we have to guess that it's Qui-Gon because it's not made clear that it's Qui-Gon.
I mean,
Though I will point out that who's the main character of A New Hope? Considering you don't see Luke until 45 minutes into the movie.
It's still Luke Skywalker. It's not 45 minutes in when you see him for the first time. It's not 45 minutes in.
It's almost
it's not.
45 minutes.
No, there's no way
not.
it is. That
It's like 15.
I think it's more. But, I mean, I get it. I do think
the first act
is...
of New Hope is extremely slow, and we'll get to that. But, sorry, go ahead.
Okay. I think it is a bit of a thing with Star Wars where there is quite a few of these movies where the main character isn't as clearly defined as he could be, and I think sometimes it makes it a bad kind of it detracts from the movie. Sometimes it doesn't because it's just telling multiple stories at the same time, and it's difficult to make it work. But when it does, I think it does work really well for this specific.
I think
series.
in general, this whole franchise is about teams of characters.
It is,
and so
quite often.
It's not. It's not really always about there being one main character. In fact, A New Hope is probably the only one that I would say is exclusively like that I can clearly state that Luke Skywalker is the main character. Because in everything else, the Han becomes a bigger role, Leia becomes a bigger role, and so I don't know.
I agree with that, but I think that the point of the question is, who experiences emotional arcs in The Phantom Menace?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I'm not sure anyone really does. Like, I think Obi-Wan has the closest thing to an arc in The Phantom Menace. That's why I would argue he's the main character, because he has, the emotional moment of the movie is Qui-Gon Jinn's death, and that moment is felt we experience that through Obi-Wan's eyes. So, but he also doesn't do anything at all in the movie up until that point, basically. So,
which makes that emotional moment less impactful because, really, you guys were this close? You didn't really hang out at all.
But also, Duel of the Fates is playing, so you kind of forgive it,
yes.
I guess. Yeah.
Hell yes. Okay, we're ignoring our rule already, by the way, because
sorry,
I have this at number 8. So I'll have to say some stuff
that's
about it.
That's close enough. We're talking about number 10 right now. We're talking about our...
Yeah, fair enough. Okay. No, well, it's your 11, though.
It's his 11.
So Grizz,
whatever.
Grizz, do you have it at number 10?
It's my number 10, yeah.
It's your number 10. Okay, so do you have anything else to say about it? Why is it your number 10? Or are you Phantom Menaced out?
No, I mean, I will say that for me, Phantom Menace would be my number 10 because the big set piece moments in this movie I enjoy better than Attack of the Clones' big set piece moments. So, a lot of people have mixed feelings on the pod race. I absolutely love the pod race, even though it does go on
Me too.
for an incredibly long time. But
It is a bit long.
But I love the pod race. And then Duel of the Fates is one of the absolute best lightsaber duels in the franchise. And the only thing I love more than lightsaber duels is big space battles. So lightsaber duels very important to me. So that Phantom Menace gets edges out Attack of the Clones for me just because of those two moments, really. Because otherwise they suffer from a lot of the same narrative problems. There's big problems with, especially in Phantom Menace, actually, with... I feel like when they were writing the movie, they're like, we need to get these characters from here to here, and we're just going to explain in a sentence or two how they get to there. And it rarely makes logical sense. They just, we need to split up Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon on the planet, so we'll just put them on separate ships. Why? There's not really a reason for it, but they tell you we should do this, and so then they do that. We need to make sure there's a reason for Jar Jar Binks to be in the entire movie. So so Qui-Gon saves his life. Well, could Jar Jar Binks have just ducked the same way that he did by getting tackled to the ground? Yes, he definitely could have, but then he wouldn't be in the whole movie. So I feel like instead of in a lot of stories they write we write a problem for the characters, and then we write a solution to that problem, and that's a common narrative thing. In here, I think the problem that they were writing solutions for was trying to find
The characters.
other problems to put the characters into.
Right.
So the writers were having problems and were trying to write solutions rather than writing them for the characters. That's a Phantom Menace for me.
So, I suppose I will be the starch defender of the Phantom Menace because I kind of like this movie. I have it at number 8. You'll see what my 10 and 9 are, which I suppose will be kind of hot takes. But I don't disagree with any of the criticisms that you guys have. I just think there is some stuff in this movie that I think works well if you take the prequels as one big narrative. And my thing with this movie is, at least compared to number 9 and 10 on my list, I care about what's happening. Because I really like Qui-Gon as a character. I agree that he doesn't have like an emotional arc or growth in the film, and he's kind of an established character that already exists and doesn't change at all. But I really enjoy the fact that he's the one Jedi that we see in the prequels that is like, oh, maybe all these rules we shouldn't follow to the letter. Maybe if we follow the rules to the letter, we're actually being our worst enemies, because we're doing some stuff sort of like, oh, we're telling a child, forget about your mom. It doesn't matter that she's a slave on this sand planet and you're never going to see her again. It's like he's the one that says, it has more of an open interpretation, more of a nuanced interpretation of what being a Jedi means. And that's one of the aspects of Star Wars that I like the most. It's one of the reasons why, spoilers, The Last Jedi, one of my favorites, because it has that sort of more interesting, nuanced idea of what the Jedi are. And it's not just, oh, this is absolute good, we have to follow these dogmatic rules, and if we don't, we are given into evil. I think that's a, well, frankly, impossible thing to follow, and it's a bad way of seeing good and evil in general. And I really enjoy his character in this movie.
I do like that the Last Jedi reckons with the shortcomings that the Jedi have in the prequels.
Yes.
Like I mentioned earlier, the Jedi in the prequels kind of suck, like a lot.
They do.
and like
Qui-Gon doesn't.
Yeah, that's true. And we'll talk about The Last Jedi at some point. But like I enjoy that. Yeah. Like people criticize the movie for that, but I kind of enjoy that kind of they recognized the Jedi shortcomings in The Last Jedi.
And the second thing that I really like about this movie, other than the fact that, I really enjoy the action scenes. I like the pod race. I really like the final lightsaber battle. The second thing that I really, really like about this movie is the politics. Everybody criticizes the prequels because of the politics. But to me, the only thing that is really, really good throughout the prequels is Palpatine rising as, oh, he's just a senator to becoming the emperor. The way that he does it is taken from history. Like, it resembles sort of the rise through the ranks and becoming of and creation of a dictatorship that actually happened in real life in my country, for example. So I think that aspect of it, seeing him always in the background, always scheming, always having a little plan to advance his to get more power a little bit at a time, is always interesting to me, and I really like him. And I think he's also the most consistently good performance throughout the prequels. So, and I really enjoyed this one that introduces it.
I think when people complain about the politics, it's not so much about Palpatine's machinations, because that is really good. Mm-hmm. I think that you're right. That is one of the best executed parts of the prequels. Yeah. I think it's that when they actually show the Trade Federation or the Senate, and they're using jargon and stuff that is kind of boring. And this is a movie directed towards kids that spends an awful lot of time in jargon.
Mm-hmm. I get that, but I like that stuff. So
fair enough.
To me, seeing how an ambitious politician uses corporations to create kind of an artificial monopoly and uses that to become more powerful and eventually become a dictator is an interesting story. And I understand, and I agree. As a kid, I thought that was really boring. Growing up, the more I watched that movie, I'm like, oh, this actually is pretty interesting.
But I think that what you're taking enjoyment from is like kind of the 3-movie arc of Palpatine getting power. And I would criticize, like Grizz, like if you're going to do a 3-movie arc of a democracy becoming a dictatorship, very interesting. However, don't spend an entire movie on trade blockades. You know, the second movie the second movie has secret armies and a civil war breaking out. Get to that a little sooner is what I would say. That's my note. And don't spend the whole movie on trade blockades. Also, Anakin should be older than 9 years old in
Yes,
this movie.
I agree.
That's a major problem.
In hindsight, they should have had whatever actor they used for episode 1 should have been just young enough that they can use him for 2 and 3, and and have consistency with that, because the jump in personality from "oh shucks, I'm a little boy, Anakin" to the whiny little punk we get in Attack of the Clones is jarring, and then also they rarely feel like the same character.
Yeah. Also, I mean, they aged down Natalie Portman for Phantom Menace, then aged her up for Attack of the Clones. It's odd to me they use the same actress for Padme, but don't use the same actor for Anakin.
Agreed.
And also, like,
I agree with that.
just, I can't care about. I mean, it's he's cute, but like I have trouble caring about a 9-year-old. Especially because like I feel like he should be the main character of the movie, and he's not because he's 9. And I don't know, like to again cite that popular review of this movie, Grizz, like things are happening that are beyond his understanding or control. So like he doesn't really feel like a character with much power or narrative control. So I don't know.
He's there because they have to put him in those places.
Exactly.
Anakin has to be here so that he can blow up this space station. So how does he get into the ship? Qui-Gon tells him, "Don't you leave that cockpit," and so he takes it super literally.
So he doesn't. Now this is pod racing. But again, I agree with that. In hindsight, I think I don't think Anakin should have been the main character. I think the main character of the trilogy should have been Obi-Wan, and we should see Qui-Gon's death from Obi-Wan's point of view, and then Anakin being a good guy in 2 from Obi-Wan's point of view as his master, and then Anakin slowly turning to the dark side in 3 from Obi-Wan's point of view. I think that would have been the stronger way to do this narrative arc. But still, I kind of have a soft spot.
And they would have been able to use Ewan McGregor more in that way, and Ewan McGregor's great. So
he's the best part of the prequels, honestly. Him and Ian McDiarmid, I think, are the best part.
I love Ian McDiarmid in all of these movies. He's so good.
He's amazing. He's just having so much fun, and
he's having a blast, man. Especially in Revenge of the Sith in particular. He is having a goddamn blast. I love it.
Hell yeah!
I really love
it. Yes.
All right. Well, okay. So Hugo, you're number 10.
We've revealed you guys is number 10. At my number 10 is Solo, Star Wars story.
All right.
I have it a little higher.
How higher?
8. So if we talked about Phantom Menace
8.
just now. Yeah.
8 as well. So yeah, I have it at 8. Let's talk about it.
So you guys both have it at 8. Okay.
Yeah.
So Solo, a Star Wars story. I actually rewatched it this week.
Me too.
Yeah, this movie is a fun little adventure movie.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I really
fun,
have.
It's fun. Shrug.
It's fun. Sometimes it looks cool. I think it's entirely inessential, which isn't necessarily bad. I just don't know why this is a Han Solo movie. It could have been anything else. Like, make the same movie, take out Han Solo and all the little Han Solo nods, and I think I like it more. Because do we need to know where he got his gun? Do we need to know where he got his name, which is like a really stupid scene? Okay, and
that's the worst. That's the worst thing in the movie.
Do we need to know why the Falcon doesn't have the front in it? No, we don't. It doesn't matter. It's like they're over-explaining stuff. They're answering questions no one's ever asked. The one element that is cool about it is seeing him, how he wins the Falcon from Lando, I guess.
Yes.
But I also think that it kind of demystifies it. I think that just the suggestion, these two guys were smugglers together, and at some point they sort of, got into an argument because one of them won the Falcon at cards or whatever. I think the suggestion of it is way more interesting than any story you can tell with it. I think it's an over-explanation that we don't need, and I just don't think, I think the movie just feels like it's there, and I don't know why they decided to tell this specific Han Solo story. It just gives backstory to little details that I don't really care about.
the story that I believe that is the main focus more than any of those other things, like where he gets his blaster, where he gets his name. This is the story of the Kessel Run.
It is
Sure.
Yeah.
That's the story, and it's like and you ask, like it's answering questions that no one ever asked. I 100% asked what the heck the Kessel Run is. I can't be the only one. Lots of people were curious about that.
I did too. Is it more interesting now that you've seen it, or was it more interesting to wonder, oh my god, what was this incredible thing?
The latter for me. Yeah, the latter for me, personally. Yeah.
To me, it's more interesting if I don't know. So I'm going to say another point. The movie kind of looks like mud all the time. Why is it so dark? Why is the cinematography so dark? Why? It's always grey, brown, and orange. Please give me some colour.
This was shot by Bradford Young, who also shot Arrival and When They See Us in Selma. I think he's a very talented cinematographer. I think this looks pretty good, actually. Yeah.
I think the cinematography in terms of shot composition looks amazing. Why is the lighting so dark? There are so many scenes that are supposed to be like in a desert, and it just looks grey. And I think it's uninteresting to look at in that sense. But it's whatever. It's just a tiny point.
So for the Kessel Run, for me, because I was so deep into the lore, my brother read all the books, and he would tell me all this stuff when we were kids. All the stuff they'd read in the books, and in Kessel, in the old canon of the books, was a planet that was very near to a black hole, which they more or less replicate in this movie. It's a similar sort of thing, and but it was like such that Kessel is slowly being pulled apart by this black hole. So when my brother told me that, and it's like, oh, so the Kessel Run is, how close can you fly your ship to this black hole? And so that's why it's measured in parsecs instead of time.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool, and so getting to see that on screen was kind of like a little bit of wish fulfillment from childhood. So that's I'm a little biased in that regard.
Brief 30-second aerospace engineer tangent. As I was watching that, I just thought, why don't you just use the gravity of the black hole to like slingshot yourself around like we do in actual astrodynamics? That way you can get a good speed boost, but no one did that. I don't know. I don't get it.
I thought the same, and I'm not an aerospace engineer because I've seen Interstellar.
But they used fuel injection.
Yeah, that makes sense. I remember the fuel injection class in aerospace engineering school. Shout out to Interstellar, though. A big moment for aerospace engineers was when Interstellar came out. Shout out to that movie.
Yeah.
Hugo, I completely agree with you that I think, first of all, this movie's fun. It's fine. Yeah. It's enjoyable. But I think if you could remove Han Solo from this, and I would actually almost prefer it if this wasn't a Han Solo movie, because
absolutely.
I should say that I just watched this for the first time this week. So I had not seen it. I did not feel like it was essential for me to see it, even though I'm a big Star Wars movie fan. I just kind of let it pass me, and then I just never got to it, and I didn't feel like I was missing much.
A lot of people did, by the way. So
yes, exactly. And so, Star Wars movies invoke a lot of very intense feelings from a lot of people. However, I can't imagine anyone feeling particularly strongly about this movie, whether negatively or positively. It's just kind of like, yeah, it's good. It's fine. Mm-hmm. And, which is weird because like it features two characters that we've come to know and love for the last several decades, and like I just kind of don't care about what happens to anybody in this movie. It doesn't really feel like Han Solo to me, and I think part of that could be the writing. Like I think the writing is like maybe a little too earnest for the Han Solo that I know, but I also think it's more the performance. And that's not a shot at Alden Ehrenreich. I think Alden Ehrenreich is actually like really, really good in this. But it's just that he's not Harrison Ford, and like I think that
although he no matter who pointing a lot,
right? No matter who they cast in this, no one is Harrison Ford in 2018. So like this movie I think may have been like kind of doomed from the start, because what this made me realize, especially watching someone else play Han Solo, is that. For me personally, I think the biggest appeal of Han Solo as a character is Harrison Ford's performance of the character. And particularly if you compare him to Luke and Leia, I think that I'm responding more to like the writing for Luke and Leia and like their character arcs and like their positions in the story. And I'm not saying the writing for Han Solo is bad or the performances for Luke and Leia are bad. Like I think it's all great, but like on the whole, I think Han Solo is made more by Harrison Ford's performance than anything else. And seeing anyone else play him it just doesn't work as much for me. Grace, you have a finger up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree it's impossible shoes to fill. And
Yes,
and so again, if there's one thing we can safely say about the vast majority of Star Wars, it's that they are ambitious. In that, we're trying to tell a story about a character that is so iconic that it is definitely not going to work for a lot of people, no matter what we do. So I appreciate the attempt. I think Alden Ehrenreich's performance is really good.
I really like it. Yeah.
In that it's not an attempt to impersonate Harrison Ford, because you couldn't possibly do it. So
Right.
I appreciate that. Like, they did a good job of capturing some of the same mannerisms, like, the pointing and things like that.
The pointing.
That sly smile.
Yeah. So like, they captured some of those things, which I think is really great. But they also did enough to showcase that we're not trying to replicate Harrison Ford. We're And as far as the earnestness of Han Solo, I personally think that because it's very clear that they intended to make more Solo movies based on how this ended, I think that what they were showing was in this movie, Han Solo is actually more similar to how we see him in Return of the Jedi, and that he learns from Beckett in this movie some character traits that he then internalizes and becomes the smarmy smuggler that we see in A New Hope. And so I imagine I imagine in Solo 2, Make It Happen. I imagine that in Solo 2 he would be more similar to the New Hope Han Solo in terms of characterization, because he's playing a character. He's playing the smarmy nerf herder, as we said.
And I see that arc going from, he's more earnest in the opening scenes, and then Beckett kind of jades, makes him a little more jaded. I think that plays out in dialogue, and I don't necessarily see the character arc. It's just that he says, "I learned to not trust people because you told me not to trust people." But I don't know. I don't buy it as much, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still think this movie's good, and I want to say that I really, really wish we could have seen the Lord Miller version of this movie, Phil Lord and Chris Miller. And because famously they began production on it, and then it was taken from them, and then it was given to Ron Howard instead, because Lucasfilm did not like the direction they were taking the character in the movie, which I trust them with everything. Famously, the guys who made 21 Jump Street and Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs and Into Spider-Verse, they are bold, audacious filmmakers, so I kind of get why maybe Lucasfilm was a little nervous with what they were doing, whatever that was. But Ron Howard, I like Ron Howard's movies. I really do. I think he's, one of our best directors, but he is more of a down the middle kind of guy.
Yeah.
And we got a down the middle kind of movie as a result of Ron Howard directing this, as opposed to a bold, surprising take that Phil Lord and Chris Miller probably would have given us. And I don't know. I feel like a lot of the Star Wars movies, for lack of a better word, with the exception of maybe Rian Johnson, we haven't had a movie handed to a really talented, unique filmmaker with unique vision. Instead, it's mostly been brand management. And Ron Howard directing Han Solo just strikes me as brand management more than anything else. And it's kind of a shame.
I do agree. I think it would be really cool if they started to take some more chances with the Star Wars property. But this is what I was talking about with Disney having a baseline.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's why all these movies for me are going to at least be good, because if I enjoy Solo, and I do, I do really enjoy Solo, that means that basically any movie that Disney Star Wars comes out, this is going to be at least the baseline. I'm not going to be disappointed with any of it. But
it's fine.
I agree that I would love to see some bigger chances taken, because I think when you have a universe as wide as the Star Wars universe, there are stories to be told that are of different genres or different styles, and in some ways it's kind of wasteful not to take those chances.
Yeah.
But maybe Han Solo's origin story was not the place to take that chance, and maybe that's why they took it away. Give us some new characters. Give Lord Miller some new characters to tell a story with.
My thing is, we don't need a Solo origin story. Solo is a complete character. We've seen him as a scoundrel. We've seen him die. He's beloved. he just doesn't need to have extra background. You can do it in a comic book, do it in a book, but as a release at the cinema, it just creates an expectation for what the movie is supposed to be that is never going to be able to fulfill.
I think if you're going to make standalone Star Wars movies, as is Disney's intention, or at least it seemed to be Disney's intention, I think a Han Solo origin story is among the first you're... I mean, obviously it's among the first you're going to make, but I feel like that's a very obvious idea, and like I don't begrudge them for doing that. I'm kind of disagreeing with you, Hugo, is I think that a Han Solo origin story makes perfect sense, but it wasn't until
from a brand management standpoint. Right.
Well, I think also in terms of like what audiences are going to be wanting standpoint.
Yeah.
Like if you are, the standalone movies, the two they've made have been kind of like filling in gaps of like Star Wars lore to extent. And I think, I mean, personally, I thought a Han Solo origin story was a great idea. It's just it wasn't until I actually saw it that I realized how critical Harrison Ford was to the Han Solo character. Yeah. So, I didn't know I didn't want this until I saw it. And I'm like, I don't really want this. I don't really need this, but... Yeah, I don't know.
I want it. I need it. Make Solo 2 happen.
Right. Okay. So, are we going back to Grizz? No.
I guess
just said mine.
You just did your
Grizz.
number 10. So number 9.
Okay. So give me your number 9.
For me is Revenge of the Sith.
Okay. So, should we talk? I think we should. Where do you have it, Josh? Do you have it also at 9?
No.
Okay. I think we should talk about it later then.
Okay, then.
Let's pencil it in. And then we'll get to it. Josh, what's your number 9?
My number 9 is Rise of Skywalker. Which we briefly talked about on this podcast in our very first episode.
We have.
If you want to go back to that.
I have it much higher.
You have it much
How
higher?
higher?
Okay.
How much higher?
Much.
More than 2 spots higher?
More than 2 spots higher.
Okay, let's put a pin in it
Okay.
then.
I have it 2 spots higher, so we'll put a pin in that one as well. So it's my turn again.
Hugo, what's your 9?
We're going to have to skip this one as well, because my number 9 is Rogue One.
Oh, yeah.
And I know Grizz has it really high.
More than 2 spots higher. Yes.
Way more than 2 spots higher for me.
Okay, but we are filling in the list. So our number 9s are, for me, Rogue One, Grizz, Revenge of the Sith, and Josh, Rise of Skywalker. We've already said our number 8s, which are, for me, Phantom Menace, and for Grizz and Josh is Solo.
Uh-huh.
So I suppose it's Grizz's turn again. What's your number 7 movie?
Sorry, real quick. What was Josh's 9?
Mine was Rise of Skywalker.
9 is Rise of Skywalker.
Okay, cool. I'm adding it as we're revealing them.
We're doing extremely, extremely detailed algorithms to determine our rankings. So
yes,
need to input into the algorithm.
Very complicated math of 1 + 1 + 2 = 4.
My number 7, which we will be talking more about later, is Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Put a pin in it.
Put the biggest pin in it.
What I want to say right here, right now, though, is, as I said, I enjoy all Star Wars movies. For me, The Last Jedi is still 4 out of 5 stars. So, like, it's...
Okay.
The problem is that I just love all Star Wars.
But
so
let the record show you are ranking this behind both Revenge of the Sith and Rise of Skywalker. Do I have that right?
I have Revenge of the Sith.
No, Revenge of the Sith is lower.
Yes, I do have it behind 9. Rise of Skywalker.
You're insane, but okay, let's
we'll get into that.
So, Josh, I guess it's your turn. What do you have at 7?
Number 7 for me is Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. I suppose we're talking about Revenge of the Sith then, because I have it at number 6. So it would make sense. So I'll just say very quickly that my number 7 is Rise of Skywalker. So we'll talk about it later because Chris has it higher, but my number 6 is Revenge of the Sith.
I have it. Rise of Skywalker. I have 2 spots higher. So
yeah, let's do Revenge of the Sith first.
We can do that next then. Let's do Revenge of the Sith, then Rise of Skywalker.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So Revenge of the Sith. Grizz has it at 9. Josh has it at 7, and I have it at 6. So I suppose Grizz should start because he's the first one who nominated it.
So Revenge of the Sith. Again, I think this is the best of the prequels.
Easily.
Yeah. And we all agree.
By a significant margin. I say a significant margin, but then I only rate it, a little bit higher than my actual rating. But it's just that it's a better told story.
Very much so.
Start to finish. Yeah. At this point, I think that you've just accepted the love story of Padme and Anakin, and they don't have to dwell on it as much.
You don't have to see them fall in love. They're
Right.
already in love, and that's a very crucial distinction.
So that makes this
Yes.
much more palatable in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this one capitalizes on the right characters. Ewan McGregor is much better utilized, so we get we get to see all the great stuff that he delivers in this. Ian McDiarmid is, like as we said, having an absolute blast as
More fun than any actor's ever had in a movie ever.
and we finally get to see more of Mace Windu. We get Samuel L. Jackson finally gets to actually be involved in in dialogue, I should say, because we do see him in action in Attack of the Clones, but it's not to the level that we do when he's confronting the Emperor. And this it was a tough task to kind of tell in a believable way how we could go from that sweet little boy in Phantom Menace to Darth Vader. But this movie comes close to doing it. I that's why it's only my number 9, because I still think it's kind of sudden. And he just kind of accepts some stuff, like, you've been living with the Jedi for so long at this point. You've been trained with them; they're your friends. But this one guy is telling you that he's the only way to save your wife.
Well, I mean, I actually think it's really well done the way he does that, because they there's like a subtle wedge between, because the Jedi are keeping Anakin at arm's length, and he can sense that. And, like, he's being infantilized and not respected, even though he kind of knows he's the most powerful one among them, I think, or has that sense.
Yeah.
And so they are keeping him at arm's length.
Outrageous. Sorry.
Right. They're keeping him at arm's length and not telling him everything and treating him like a kid. And then there's this guy over here who's saying, not only are they keeping stuff from you, they're keeping, like, powers that are possible from you. And, like, your biggest fear and anxiety right now is to lose your wife the way you lost your mom, and I can prevent that from happening.
Yeah.
And that temptation is, like, I think that's really well done. And that scene at the opera or whatever, where those two guys are having that conversation, is really, really good. And Hugo's favorite line in the movie is in that portion.
Absolutely.
Unnatural, whatever.
Natural.
I think that,
Have you
I talked
ever
about
heard the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise?
You talk about story scope, how much ground they had to cover in Attack of the Clones. I think Revenge of the Sith really, really solves that problem well, in that the opening scene, Anakin does some shady stuff, morally gray stuff at the behest of the Emperor, which is execute Count Dooku, and then ends the movie where he ends. Like, I think, like, it's just a lot better executed than anything else in the prequels by a long shot. I rewatched this again this week, and, like, I just think this is really good. Like, there's still a lot of, like, stilted dialogue and kind of bad stuff with Padme, but, like, I don't know. I think that a lot of this works really well. And, like, if more of the prequels had been just this, I think the prequels would have worked a lot better. Like, honestly, if you are curious about how Anakin Skywalker became Darth Vader, I wouldn't suggest watching episode 1 or 2. I would just watch episode 3, because it's all here. Yeah. Everything you need is all here,
They nail the tragedy is what they nail in this one for me.
And I feel it. I feel the tragedy.
Yeah.
I think it is tragic, and I think it's really effective. Yeah.
And
this worked more for me on rewatch this week than I remember it working when I saw it in theaters. I think it's actually pretty good.
I agree. I mean, I've watched this, dozens of times at this point, but I remember when I first watched it, I thought it was good, but after a couple more rewatches, as I grew up, I think as well, I grew to appreciate it. Because in general, I like movies that have happy endings. I mean, that's just a thing about me as a person. This does not have a happy ending. So,
No.
But I also there's a part of me that loves a movie that is bold enough to end on a great tragedy. Yes, we have the benefit in this of knowing that what's going to happen in the future. So we know that this isn't the end of the story, and so that maybe that makes it a little more uplifting. But I think it's a really cool thing to have a story where your hero is the villain, and and not just a villain, but like the villain.
Yeah.
Who kills children?
The younglings.
So, I have this at number 6.
Okay.
It's outside of my top 5 just because I think the movies in my top 5 have a level of quality in execution that this movie, despite how much honestly I love it, doesn't have, because there's still, you know, some stilted dialogue. You will not take her from me. It's like it does, you know, it.
So Love Has Blinded You?
Yeah, that one. That I don't like the Love Has Blinded You part. That one was bad.
There are a bunch of moments that you're like, oh, there are a few scenes where you're like clearly looking at a green screen and it doesn't look great. Although I think the special effects in this
looks a lot better considering it was only 3 years.
Pretty good.
It was only 3 years after Attack of the Clones, and it was a lot better in those 3 years.
Made in 2005, and considering the amount of special effects shot that they are going for, I think this looks pretty good. But just overall, I think this movie completely nails the tragedy of not only Anakin turning to the dark side, but of Order 66. The idea that the Jedi have failed themselves. They were so dogmatic and so sort of stuck in their ways that they weren't even able to realize that it was this giant threat that was coming from the inside. But we get that scene in Attack of the Clones where Yoda says, oh, it's kind of troubling that we're just accepting this army and using it. And that is paid off in this, because we see how, you know, it was all a machination from Palpatine, or Darth Sidious, if you will, to kill them all and to destroy the Order and to create this dictatorship that is going to be then the Empire that we see in the original trilogy. But I think every scene with Yoda, Obi-Wan, or Palpatine in this film is awesome. I love the fight between Obi-Wan and
Anakin?
What's he called? No. Grievous, General Grievous.
Yeah.
General Grievous is a character that I really enjoy. I think he's just like a mustache-twirling villain, but in a cool way. I think Star Wars needs kind of that middle villain that you have at the sort of middle part of the movie to have a cool fight, and I think that fight is really cool. Hello there, General Kenobi is like the best Star Wars meme of all time, and I stand by it that it's an awesome scene overall. I think this movie is incredibly quotable. And not only the bad dialogue, even the good dialogue. There's this. We've talked about the opera house scene, but I also think everything during the fight at the end that Obi-Wan says is fun dialogue, because he's such a good actor that he's able to sell it, despite the fact that it's such, like, if you just read it on the page, you can, oh, this is George Lucas dialogue through and through. But he's so good at it, like he makes it iconic.
I
ahead,
I agree with the vast majority of the dialogue in that scene. I love it. You are my brother, Anakin. You know, all that. You know,
I loved you.
All that is so good.
It's so
except
cool.
for the part where it says, "You can't possibly defeat me, Anakin. I have the high ground."
I have the high
ground. He
ground.
does have the high ground, though.
But they flip and jump all the time. Like Anakin can jump really high.
I mean, don't get me started on like. Don't get me started on like the logic of Jedi powers and what they can and can't do.
If you read the lore, you know that Obi-Wan is a master of the defensive arts, and if he has the high ground, he's going to defeat you. But anyway, that's nerdy shit, nerdy Star Wars crap. But you know, I think Order 66 is one of the best sequences in Star Wars. I love the music. I love the execution. I love that shot that they do. The execution of the scene. But I love that shot that they do when you see sort of a Jedi in front. I can't remember exactly which one it is, and you see the platoon behind him, and they are talking among themselves.
Ki-Adi-Mundi.
Yeah, is it Ki-Adi-Mundi that you see? And they zoom in on the feet of the clone troopers, because knowing that they are setting themselves to start shooting. I think all that sequence is fantastic, and the music by John Williams is just
god, it's heartbreaking.
This might be my favorite. Yeah, this might be my favorite Star Wars score overall. Revenge of the Sith. I absolutely love it. And what else can I add? I think the line in The Last Jedi, "The legacy of the Jedi is failure," is a payoff to this movie. Like, this movie is the one movie in the prequels where they really show the ways in which the Jedi failed Anakin, and in turn that caused their own destruction. And I think it's great. And if you see the saga as a whole, as a 6-movie saga that George Lucas made, I think this is a great middle point for it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said there. They're you know.
Yoda's saying meditate on this all the time. How he has to go meditate on this. That's rough. You can't sense that Palpatine's like, you know, hidden in plain sight there? You got to go meditate on it more? Okay. All right.
I think the
All-powerful
idea
dude.
there
Okay.
is that even Yoda has bought into a more dogmatic way. Because if you think about the original trilogy, the Jedi there are a little less uptight than they are in the prequels, because they kind of know that the old way didn't
defeated.
work out.
The
Yeah.
Jedi in the
They were
original trilogy are
defeated.
defeated. They're in hiding.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, I think
They're the
it's
underdogs.
a learning experience even for Yoda. And, Yoda reappears and says, "Oh, failure, the greatest teacher is." It's like, because you can see it in this movie. Also, I love the fight in this film, when they cut between the fight between Obi-Wan and Anakin, and at the same time you see the Emperor versus Yoda. I love all that stuff. It's a bit over the top with Yoda particularly, but to me, that stuff will never not be great, because I saw it
agree.
when I was 9 in the theaters.
Love it.
And it was amazing.
I think that if I could, because like I've mentioned how much I love lightsaber duels, Mace Windu, when he confronts the Emperor, he does the spiral attack, that's too much. Do you guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
the
that's
Emperor
good.
launches out of the chair and
The Emperor
does a corkscrew
thing.
and then, we talk about the
I know what
close-ups
you
they
mean.
did for Count Dooku, and they have to do that again with Ian McDiarmid because, again, he's an older guy.
Yeah.
The faces he makes during the course of this battle are the goofiest faces. And it's one of those
sure
hate-love
something.
things, because they're so goofy that I kind of hate them, but also he's having so much fun, it's hard not to love.
Unlimited power! You love to
I
see
love
it.
all that stuff, man.
Yeah,
It's so much fun.
And you can tell just by the way we're talking about it, Revenge of the Sith is the most fun movie of
It is.
of
And it's
the prequel
tragic
trilogy.
at the same time.
Yeah.
'Cause it's the most fun despite the fact that it's not trying to be as fun as the other ones. Which is,
Yeah, definitely the most emotionally resonant. Definitely one that
sure.
works most for me from a storytelling perspective. And also I think it's probably the most fun as well. I mean, there's stuff to pick apart about it, but I think this actually,
Absolutely.
I enjoy this movie. Yeah.
Yep.
I do like that.
Okay.
One last thing on Revenge of the Sith is that is that it took a while, but I think over time people have come to like Revenge of the Sith so much that it has changed their opinion on the prequels as a whole. Because especially when Revenge of the Sith was coming out, I remember how many people were like, "Oh, man, these prequels have been pretty bad, man. I don't know. I don't even know if I'm going to care about this." But now people look back and like, "Oh yeah, the prequels, those were all right."
Yeah, because I think what the people respond to is the overall overarching story, and they forget some of the faults, particularly in the first two. They kind of ignore them, so I feel like that's what they're responding to. And I think the fact that they end on such a high note compared to the first two is something that kind of sticks with you.
I would argue that, I mean, as I've said, this works for me far more than the other two movies, prequel movies. And like, if the other two were like this, I would like the prequels a lot more. But I do not like the quality of this movie trick me into thinking that the prequels themselves were like okay. This movie's okay. The other two are not. But
I'm talking about the general populace, not movie buffs.
Yeah. And also, like this is Star Wars. 20 years after the film has been released, all the fans love it. That's how Star Wars works. It has been this way since Empire Strikes Back, because the day Empire came out, people were like, "Oh, he's lying. He can't be his father. And this movie's so dark. And the protagonists lose." So we'll talk about that in the next episode. But
I can't wait for 2037 when people finally come around on The Last Jedi and realize how good it is.
Hell yeah. Oh my god. I'm so excited to talk about it. But we'll get to it.
The way you feel about
Okay.
people's thoughts on The Last Jedi is the way I feel about people's thoughts on Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, except The Last Jedi is actually good and Rise of Skywalker's not. We'll get into that later.
Okay. Let's chill for a second. Whose turn is it? Because I said my number 7 is Rise of Skywalker, and my number 6 is.
we were going to talk about Rise of
Sith.
Skywalker now because I said it was
we
my
can
number 5.
talk about Rise of Skywalker if we want. But
My 9.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
let's
it
do
your
it.
number 5? Okay.
It's
I
my
think
number 5.
Then it's fair. Okay, so who wants? I think the first person who talked about it was Josh. So Josh's turn.
I don't have a whole lot to say about it. I feel like we talked about it in our first episode.
That's fair.
I thought it was I thought The Last Jedi was the best of the new trilogy, and Rise of Skywalker just kind of like took everything the Last Jedi did that was interesting and made it less interesting by a good margin. And I don't know. I think that a lot of the storytelling is a little nonsensical. The idea of bringing Palpatine back was a little like, it's fine to bring Palpatine back, but to just like hand wave away the explanation of how or why he came back kind of didn't sit right with me. It seemed like real quick. Yeah.
Am I allowed to interject with counterpoints on things while you're saying this, or do you want me to wait?
Whatever you want, man. No, go ahead.
Okay. So as far as bringing Palpatine back, I don't really think that. I mean, you could argue. I can see the argument that it's a little hand wavy, but
bad news, guys. Somehow Palpatine's back.
Okay, so yes, the opening scroll. I will agree that was probably not the best way to let people know Palpatine was back, because I think it would have been better if they had shown it. You know, like shown someone receiving the message from Palpatine, right? That would have been better. But as far as like how did he come back, I think the moment that you see him on Exegol, you can see he's got this huge crew of hundreds of thousands of followers who have been keeping him alive for this whole time.
But they haven't.
Sure.
It's not the same body. It's a clone.
Okay. That's fine, but I guess what I'm saying is...
it's an explanation the actual explanation is in the novelization, which I understand how is
Don't give
annoying.
me that. I don't want to hear that at all.
Exactly.
But I guess my point is none of this was set up in Force Awakens or The Last Jedi. Mm-hmm. It seems like a very dramatic course correct, and, conclusion not found in evidence. Palpatine's behind everything, just kind of is set upon us in the opening crawl and the opening scene. I think the X-Call stuff is cool, but like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel like cohesive storytelling to me. It seems like a just band-aid over, a band-aid over to give a narrative solution to something that I didn't think was a problem in the first place.
Problem.
Again,
as I said, I don't have a problem with the Last Jedi. I should let you continue, but I don't have a problem with the Last Jedi at all. So for me, the Rise of Skywalker, I also don't have a problem with, because it's just the next part of the story for me. I didn't have any preconceived notions of what I was going to get out of this story. That's how I approached it. And so I think maybe that just made it more palatable.
Call me crazy. My preconceived notion of what I was going to get out of the story was a conclusion to the previous two films that I saw. Maybe I'm crazy for expecting a conclusion from a third entry in a trilogy, but it didn't really give me that in a satisfying way. It kind of just backtracked a bunch and then gave an ending that I felt didn't really fit with what was set up in Acts 1 and 2, so to speak. And, it was just kind of super unsatisfying, disappointing for me. But you guys felt differently, so...
Okay, well, so the way you're talking about it, so why is it higher than Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones for you?
Because I think it more competently made. I think it's kind of not that competently made. I think the storytelling has a lot of holes. I mean, I'm not one of those people who, like, has a huge problem with plot holes, but, like, at least make emotional sense, and I think it makes neither logical nor emotional sense for a lot of it. And I can say that about the prequels as well, but at least, I don't know, this is a little better.
This is one of those situations where I honestly, I said this after I rewatched it last night on my review on Letterboxd. I feel like I'm not watching the same movie that other people are, because I respond to it so completely differently than you. That it makes me wonder, like, are we watching the same movie?
I mean, I don't know. I've seen it twice. Maybe I should watch it a third time so I can give you a more detailed breakdown of the things that I have that I'm not responding to in it, and I can do that if you like. But
I like talking to you about movies, so that's fine with me.
Sure.
So.
I don't know. Like, I think.
So if I can
go ahead.
Yeah. I am both in terms of my opinion and in terms of my ranking. I am literally splitting the difference between you guys. I don't disagree that the film isn't as satisfying as it should be in terms of how it concludes the trilogy. I kind of agree with that. I do think it does feel a bit rushed. It does feel like it's kind of responding to the response of The Last Jedi. But at the same time, I like how it is a conclusion to the 9-movie saga. So it works for me in that sense. And maybe it's just because I'm such a huge fan of these movies and I see them as a giant whole that as a conclusion to the 9-movie saga, I do really enjoy this. I think it did get me on an emotional level. I like the emotional arcs in the film, even though I don't always agree. I don't always love some of the story decisions. I think Palpatine being back, to me, once he says the line from Revenge of the Sith, and he, to me, is like, oh, he did a Voldemort. He came back somehow with dark magic, and for me personally, that is enough. But
was for me too.
I'm also someone who has delved into, the Star Wars animated show, where all that dark magic stuff is kind of expanded upon and kind of given a larger role than it has in the movies. And I can understand how just watching the movies, this feels like kind of out of left field. I see that. I just kind of responded to the movie on what it was doing on an emotional and thematic level, considering Star Wars as a whole. I don't think it's as inconsistent with The Last Jedi as some people say. I do, because like a lot of the story does hinge on Rey's connection with Kylo, which was set up in The Last Jedi. It is a bit hand wavy with some stuff. I don't love that Rey is a Palpatine, but I don't mind. Like, the thing that annoys me more. Yeah, the thing that annoys me more is not necessarily Rey Palpatine, but it's Rey. The fact that she says Rey Skywalker at the end. That is the one moment in the movie that I'm like, oh, okay. Why did they do that?
It's a little cheeseball, but I don't mind it.
If she said it, yeah, okay. But if she said Rey, just Rey, then the theme of the movie would still have been, it doesn't matter. Your legacy doesn't matter. You build your own. I'm Rey, just Rey. So regardless of whether I've been sold for strap money and I'm a nobody, or I'm the son, the daughter of the Emperor, granddaughter of the Emperor, I'm still deciding to be my own person, and I'm standing up to that. Can we say
forge your own
patriarchal
destiny.
Power? You forge your own destiny. The fact that she picks Skywalker is kind of. It does feel like a bit of a brand management thing where they're saying, oh, this is Skywalker Saga, we have to include it with the Skywalker name meaning something. And I don't think you need that. I think the Skywalker name already means something without that scene. But just overall, I still enjoy the movie. I still think it kind of works as a conclusion to the trilogy. And I think it does work for me as a conclusion to the 9-movie saga, as I said. I really like the action sequences. I think some of the cinematography during the action sequences is absolutely stunning. The music's amazing, but I mean, I guess that's kind of a given with John Williams. But
yeah.
I love the scene where all the tiny ships arrive, and it's like, oh, it's not a navy, it's just people, and you can hear Lando saying, "There's more of us." That line, I think all that stuff is cool. I think it does a good job at dealing with Leia, despite the limitations that they had to work around. Since they chose to put her in the movie, they did, I think, the best that they could. I can see how it feels a bit weird when you see it, but it kind of works for me. And also, The Last Jedi gave me enough of a farewell to that character that I don't mind it too much. So yeah, that's why it's kind of middle of the pack for me. It's at my number 7, but I like this movie.
You said you like what it's doing on an emotional level. What is it doing on an emotional level for you?
Well, for me, it is reaffirming what Star Wars is ultimately about, which is kind of found family. Redemption is always an option, even for characters who maybe don't deserve it. But there's always, because as much as you can look at it from a more nuanced, real world point of view, Star Wars is, famous Patrick H. Willem quote, it is a movie about space wizards intended for 12-year-olds. Right. So it's still a big morality tale. And I think in that sense, it does work. And I think the scene at the end where all the people do come pays off the fact that on Crate in The Last Jedi, they didn't come. The legend of Luke Skywalker, for me, that final scene that we get with the children telling the story, Luke Skywalker, Jedi Master, and they tell the story of Luke facing down the whole First Order by himself, has spread across the galaxy, and so the galaxy has hope again, and they're coming in aid of what's left of the Resistance, and they're fighting this big bad together. I think that on an emotional level does work for me. I agree that on a character level it doesn't nail it all the time. My favorite character in the trilogy is Kylo Ren, and I think he's the only character that has a completely consistent arc from beginning to end that I like. So I'm happy about that.
And he does have a great, like his arc, even just within Rise of Skywalker, I think is very well done.
Is well done.
It looks like Josh
the
disagrees,
rebuilding of the mask is a bit iffy. The rebuilding of the mask is a bit iffy.
I think that is emblematic of he's still having inner conflict. There's the part of him that wants to live up to what Snoke had set as the expectations. There's the part of him that wants to live up to the expectations he had about he wanted to be like granddad. He wanted to be the next Darth Vader. And then there's the expectations that his parents put on him. And then by the end of the movie, it's he finally is just Ben Solo. That it's again forging your own destiny. I think that's really, really well done. And the mask is just emblematic of his. It's a very obvious symbol for his fractured mental capacities here, because he's holding it all together, but he doesn't. At any moment he's going to break and not know where to go next. And that I think he has a great arc with that. I personally think that Finn in Rise of Skywalker is really well done. I wish that they had done more. I know that.
I'm sorry. What? What happens to Finn in Rise of Skywalker? Nothing happens to him.
We find out he's Force sensitive. That's awesome.
Do we?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
All the feelings he's talking about, the thing that he wanted to tell Rey the whole movie was that I can use the Force.
That's a bullshit retcon explanation. I would think, but he's gonna tell her he loves her is what he's gonna tell her. No, Kathleen Kennedy or whoever it was, I can't remember which Star Wars person said it, he was gonna tell her he's Force sensitive, but I don't buy that for a second.
I got it first watch that he was talking about being Force sensitive, and it's something that's set up in the first movie in The Force Awakens. They set up that he's Force sensitive.
What's the payoff to Finn being Force sensitive?
It's setting up the future.
Saying, I have a feeling. Future movies beyond this one?
Not necessarily future movies, but the world continues. There's going to be more Jedi. Rey is not going to be the last, because we already have at least one other person who's Force sensitive. They set it up in The Force Awakens. When during when they're shooting the village at the beginning, and Kylo looks and sees, Finn looking at him. That's the moment that is Kylo recognizing. Hang on, what is it about this stormtrooper? They're setting it up there. That's the Force that he's picking up. He's registering that, and then
I don't know. It certainly isn't as clear as it could be. If
I agree.
And that's why that's kind of why I like it. It was the most understated thing in this whole trilogy that they were setting up that Finn is Force sensitive, and he knows it's this ship that we have to go attack because he's sensing that through the Force. So that's why I think a lot of stuff that people thought was hand wavy with Finn's character was Force sensitivity, and he didn't know how to broach the subject with Rey because Rey is trying to deal with her own inner turmoil regarding her parentage and then also trying to train and become the Jedi, the only hope of the Republic. Of the Resistance, so that's why I think he was going to tell her, I'm Force. I'm like you.
Yeah, we're about to die, and the one thing that I can't die, I have to get this out before I die. I cannot die having not said, Rey, I'm Force sensitive. Bullshit. Don't give me that, especially given how clearly Finn has a big crush on Rey in both The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. Then that just kind of is dropped, and he can't die without telling her he's Force sensitive? Come on.
The first time I saw it, I also thought he was going to tell her he loves her.
He was.
The second time,
he was. That's the thing, is he was. That's how it was intended to be written.
I think you were meant to think that that's what he was going to say. But then by the end of the movie, you're supposed to recognize that he has the Force and that she's not going to be the only Jedi.
But I feel like, though, you have to really look into the details to get it. And you have to see this movie. I mean, I get it. You saw it in the first one. I thought, it's probably that after I'd seen it 3 times. And I'd read about the directors and the writers' intentions. And like for me, it was always kind of like I always thought, I'm not sure what he wanted to say, but it's kind of weird that they dropped it. Like, it's kind of weird that by the end they don't outright say whatever it was.
Pay it off. Pay it off. You set it up how many times? Pay it off.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's probably why it ranks higher for me, because I thought it was paid off. Like, I got it.
Does he ever tell Ray he's force sensitive?
He doesn't have to.
Then it wasn't paid off.
He doesn't have
it's
to
not
on
paid
the
off.
screen there.
Then it's not paid off.
I know what I know what he was
going
to say. So
this
me,
is why the episode is called the Star Wars Wars.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, we're not going to like change each other's minds on this. I'm just trying to see where you're coming from, and I was hoping you would understand where I'm coming from. Josh just thinks I'm crazy.
I think you're giving the movie enormous benefits of the doubt that is not, conclusion not found in evidence is my take.
Okay.
What is the next one on the list? And also, are we done with this episode?
We are at 1 hour 30. I think we can end this here and do part 2 next week. So, yeah, that got a bit contentious at the end, but that's what debating Star Wars.
I love Josh.
I'm joking.
We're fine.
I am joking. I am joking. That's what debating Star Wars is. I will just remind you of the rankings so far. I've added up the movies as we were talking about it, and so far we have for the official Remember the Film list, we have at number 11 we have Attack of the Clones, at number 10 we have The Phantom Menace, at number 9 we have Solo, A Star Wars Story, at number 8 we have Revenge of the Sith, and at number 7 we have The Rise of Skywalker. So next week we said we were going to do the top 5, but I guess we'll do the top 6 since we had a bit of an introduction on this one as well. So yeah, subscribe to the podcast. Let us at us on Twitter to let us know why our Star Wars opinions are wrong. Please, Hugo_Pinay, debate me on Star Wars. I'm always up for it. I love it. I enjoy talking about Star Wars on the internet, even though it gets a bit tough sometimes.
Be sure to tweet at GoodGameGrizz and tell him why Rise of Skywalker is not that great.
But be nice, because I'm a sweet boy and I deserve friendship.
He is a sweet boy.
Nice. Be nice. I like Rise of Skywalker. I enjoy it. I'm in the middle of you guys, I think.
I mean, like I said, I feel like I watched a different movie. And
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's how I feel talking to some people about The Last Jedi. So it makes sense. It can happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Also, follow at RTF_pod on Twitter.
Yes. And let us know what you think. And suggest us some topics or give us some feedback. That'd
or
be
some
fun.
films to remember. Maybe a film you've forgotten. You want to remember it. We're the guys.
Film remembers.
Make us remember the film, please. All right. Goodbye, everyone. See you next week.